They texted you first, every single day, then suddenly, nothing. 3 days of silence that feel like psychological warfare. But here's what nobody tells you about being ignored. The person who stops responding isn't winning. They just handed you the nuclear codes to their mind. And I'm about to show you exactly how to detonate them. Before I reveal this psychological weapon, if you're someone who's tired of being taken for granted, tired of chasing people who should be chasing you, hit that subscribe button right now, because what you're about to learn will flip every power dynamic in your life. And I mean every single one. See, most people think silence is rejection. Wrong. Silence is data. When someone stops responding, they're not telling you they don't care. They're revealing their entire strategy. They think you'll panic. They think you'll double text. They think you'll spiral. But what if you didn't? What if their silence became your superpower? Here's the thing that will blow your mind. The moment someone ignores you, they start a countdown timer in their own head. They're waiting for your reaction. They're checking their phone more than you are. They're imagining your next move. But you're not going to give them one, because I'm about to teach you something that ancient strategists knew, but modern psychology forgot. Drop a comment right now. What's the longest someone has ignored you before crawling back? I bet it's less time than you think. Because here's the secret they don't want you to know. People don't ignore power. They test it. When someone goes silent on you, they're not rejecting you, they're measuring you. They want to know if you'll break, if you'll beg, if you'll prove they control your emotional state. But what happens when you don't just match their silence? You weaponize it? Think about this. Every unanswered text creates a psychological debt. Not in your mind, in theirs. They know they owe you a response. That knowledge sits there, growing heavier each day. Most people relieve that pressure by chasing. You're going to let it build until it crushes them. But wait, this gets darker. Because what I discovered will change how you see every relationship you've ever had. The person who ignores you first isn't strong, they're terrified. Terrified of what? Of losing control. See, responding to you means engaging with your frame. So they withdraw, hoping you'll chase them into theirs. Comment below if you've ever felt this. Someone pulls away and suddenly you want them more. That's not love. That's psychological manipulation. And today, you're learning to flip it. Here's where it gets interesting. I tested this with someone who hadn't responded to me in 2 weeks. What I did next made them text me 17 times in one day. 17. But first, you need to understand the 3 levels of silence. Level 1 is reactive silence. You don't respond because you're hurt. This is amateur hour. They can smell your pain through the screen. Level 2 is strategic silence. You don't respond because you're busy. Better but still predictable. Level 3, this is where you become untouchable. Nuclear silence. You don't respond because you've transcended needing to. But how do you reach nuclear silence? How do you become so psychologically bulletproof that their ignorance becomes your fuel? Subscribe if you want me to break down the exact method, because what comes next will rewire your entire nervous system. The first thing you do when someone ignores you is celebrate. Yes, you heard that right. They just revealed their hand. They just showed you they're playing games. And games have rules. Rules you're about to break. See, most people treat being ignored like abandonment, but it's not abandonment. It's an invitation. An invitation to what? To evolve beyond their reach. To become someone they can't ignore even if they tried. But here's the catch. You can't fake this evolution. You have to become it. Drop a comment. Have you ever had someone ignore you, then suddenly blow up your phone? What changed? I'll tell you what changed. You stopped being available. But there's a specific way to do this that triggers obsession, not just interest. The ancient Stoics had a phrase, amor fati, love your fate. When someone ignores you, that's your fate speaking. It's telling you this person just disqualified themselves from your inner circle. They just showed you they can't handle your full presence, so you don't dim it. You intensify it, but not for them, for everyone else. Here's the mind-bending part. The moment you stop needing their response, something shifts in the quantum field between you. They feel it, not consciously, but their subconscious starts sending alarm signals. Why aren't they chasing? What do they know that I don't? Who else has their attention now? This is where most people mess up. They think ignoring back is the power move. Wrong. Ignoring is passive. What you're about to do is active. You're going to become so visible, so elevated, so transformed, that your absence from their life becomes a presence they can't escape. But wait, I haven't told you the most disturbing part. The reason this works isn't because they miss you. It's because they miss who they were when they had your attention. You see, your attention made them feel powerful, important, chosen. When you withdraw it completely, they don't just lose you, they lose a version of themselves. Comment if this hits different. You thought they were ignoring you, but really they were testing to see if you were addicted to them. Plot twist. You're about to show them who's really addicted to who.
Now, here's where the psychology gets surgical. When someone ignores you, they expect one of three reactions: chase, anger, or indifference. But you're going to give them something they've never experienced. Elevation. You're going to rise so fast, so visibly, that their decision to ignore you looks like the worst investment of their life. Subscribe right now if you're ready to learn this technique, because once you know it, you can never go back to being ignored again. And I mean never. The technique is called reverse gravitational pull. Here's how it works. Instead of orbiting them, you become your own sun. But not just any sun. A supernova. Expanding, glowing, impossible to ignore. While they're playing small games with silence, you're playing the infinite game of growth. But here's the kicker. You document everything. Not for them, for you. Every workout, every win, every level up, every moment of joy without them. You're not posting for attention. You're creating evidence. Evidence of what? Of how irrelevant their silence is to your evolution. This triggers something primal. See, humans are wired for FOMO, fear of missing out. But there's something stronger. FOBO, fear of being out. When they see you thriving without them, they don't just feel excluded. They feel extinct, like they're watching their own irrelevance in real time. Drop a comment with just the word power if you're ready to become the person who never gets ignored again. Because what I'm about to share will change your entire energetic signature. You want to know why certain people never get ignored? It's not because they're attractive. It's not because they're successful. It's because they carry an energy that says, I am the moment you'll regret missing. They don't chase attention. They create gravity. And gravity doesn't ask permission. But creating this gravity requires killing the version of you that needed their response. This is the hardest part. You have to murder your own neediness. You have to assassinate your own addiction to validation. You have to execute the part of you that checks if they watched your story. Here's the brutal truth nobody wants to hear. The person ignoring you is doing you a favor. They're showing you where you're still weak, where you still need external validation, where you still give your power away. Their silence is your teacher, but only if you're willing to learn. Now, what happens when you implement this? First, you'll feel withdrawal. Your nervous system will scream for their attention. This is normal. This is your addiction dying. Let it die loud. Let it die messy. But let it die. Because on the other side of that death is a version of you that doesn't need anyone's response to feel whole. Then something strange happens. People start noticing. Not just them, everyone. Your energy shifts from needy to magnetic. Your presence goes from pleasant to powerful. You stop being someone people can ignore and start being someone they can't forget. Comment below, what would you do with your time if you never checked to see if they responded again? That's the life waiting for you on the other side of this transformation. But here's where it gets supernatural. The universe has a weird law. The moment you truly don't need something, it shows up at your door. Not because you manipulated it, but because you transcended it. You'll be in the middle of your best life, completely forgotten they exist, and that's when your phone will light up. Their name, after weeks, maybe months, a casual hey, like nothing happened, like they didn't just try to psychologically destabilize you. But you're different now. That hey doesn't hit the same, because you've been living in a dimension they can't access anymore. Subscribe if you want to know exactly how to respond when they finally text back. Because most people ruin their power in this moment. They either go cold and bitter, or they melt back into old patterns. But there's a third way, the way of the truly powerful. You respond, eventually, not from emotion, from position. Your energy is different, warm but distant, present but unreachable, like you're talking to them through bulletproof glass. They feel it immediately. You're not the same person they ignored. You're not even the same species. This is when they panic, because they realize something terrifying. They didn't ignore you. They ignored their only shot at keeping you. And now you're a luxury they can no longer afford. But let me tell you something even more powerful. Sometimes they don't come back. Sometimes your evolution is so complete that their energy can't even reach your frequency anymore. And that's not loss. That's graduation. You've outgrown the need for their validation so completely that the universe removes them permanently. Drop a comment saying, "I choose me," if you're ready to stop waiting for people to choose you. Because what if the person ignoring you is just clearing space for someone who could never? Here's what most gurus won't tell you. The goal isn't to get them back. The goal is to get yourself back. To reclaim every piece of power you gave away while waiting for their text. To collect every fragment of attention you scattered checking their social media. To become so whole that their silence or speech becomes equally irrelevant. You see, we live in an attention economy. Everyone's selling their focus for likes, for responses, for validation. But what if you became attention-rich? What if you hoarded your focus like gold? What if you became so selective with your energy that people had to earn the right to ignore you? This is the final level, when ignoring you becomes impossible, not because you demand attention, but because your absence creates a vacuum. Your silence sounds like thunder. Your withdrawal feels like winter. You don't have to chase anyone because your mere existence is the chase. But here's the plot twist that will blow your mind. The person who's been ignoring you, they're not your enemy. They're your activation. They're the cosmic alarm clock waking you up to your own power. Their silence is the surgery removing your neediness. Their absence is the space where your self-love grows. Comment activated if you feel that shift happening right now. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. I need to tell you about Sarah. She messaged me after her boyfriend of 3 years suddenly went cold. Stopped responding mid-conversation. Didn't explain. Just vanished. She was destroyed. Checking her phone every 30 seconds. Analyzing their last conversation for clues. Spiraling. I told her exactly what I'm telling you. Stop. Full stop. Delete the conversation. Not block. Delete. Remove the visual trigger. Then we started what I call the reconstruction. For 30 days, she didn't check his anything. Instead, she became unrecognizable. New routines, new goals, new energy. Day 15, he noticed. Started watching all her stories but not responding. Day 22, he liked an old photo, testing the waters. Day 28, the paragraph text arrived. But by then, Sarah had already met someone who texted back immediately. Someone who chose her from day one. Subscribe right now because this is the kind of transformation that happens when you stop accepting crumbs of attention. See, here's what Sarah learned. The person ignoring you is living in scarcity. They think attention is a weapon. But you're about to discover attention is infinite when you're the source. You don't need theirs because you're generating your own. You're not waiting for the sun. You became it. But this requires a complete identity shift. You have to stop seeing yourself as someone who gets ignored and start seeing yourself as someone people clear their schedule for. This isn't ego. This is energy. When you believe your priority, you become it. When you act like an option, you remain it. The universe responds to identity, not desire. You can want their attention all day, but until you become someone who doesn't tolerate being ignored, you'll keep attracting people who test that boundary. The moment you become intolerant to disrespect, disrespect becomes allergic to you. Here's something that will crack your reality open. Every person who's ignoring someone right now is simultaneously desperate for someone else's attention. It's a chain of neglect. But you're about to break your link. You're about to become the endpoint where attention comes to multiply, not die. Comment below. Who are you becoming while they're not watching? Because that's the person who's about to change everything. The ancient Greeks had a word, errate, excellence of character, but it meant more than being good. It meant becoming undeniable. So excellent that ignoring you would be like ignoring the sun. Possible but painful. That's your destination. Not getting their text back. Becoming atmospheric. But here's the advanced technique nobody teaches. While they're ignoring you, you're going to practice something called energetic billing. Every day they don't respond, you're charging interest. Not financial, spiritual. You're raising your standards, increasing your requirements, inflating your worth. So if they come back in a week, they meet a week's worth of evolution. Come back in a month, they meet a completely different human. Come back in a year, they won't even recognize your frequency. This isn't revenge. It's mathematics. Time plus growth equals inaccessibility. You know what's funny? The person ignoring you thinks they're in control. They think silence is their power play. But silence is just space. And space can be filled with anything. They left space. You filled it with your evolution. Now they're going to suffocate on how much you grew without them. Subscribe and hit the bell because I'm about to drop the exact protocol for becoming unignorable. This isn't theory. This is the blueprint. First, you implement the 24-hour rule. Someone doesn't respond within 24 hours? They've communicated their priority. You match it, not with coldness, with clarity. They've shown you where you rank. Beautiful. Now you know where to rank them. Dead last. Second, the energy audit. Every ounce of energy you were spending on them, redirect it to your body, your goals, your growth, your joy. Become suspicious of how good you feel without them. Become addicted to your own company. Become high on your own supply. Third, the visibility shift. You don't hide, you shine, but not for them, for you. Document your journey like you're the most interesting person alive. Because guess what? To someone you are. Maybe to many someones, but you'll never meet them while you're staring at your phone waiting for a ghost to text. Drop a comment. What's one thing you've been putting off while waiting for their response? Go do it. Right now. Watch how different you feel when you stop waiting and start living. But here's the thing that breaks people's brains. The opposite of love isn't hate. It's indifference. When someone ignores you, they're betting you can't achieve indifference. They're gambling on your addiction. But what happens when you don't just achieve indifference, you transcend into preference? You prefer your life without their chaos. This is when the energy inverts. They feel it like a disturbance in the force. Something's wrong. You're not playing your role. You're not chasing. You're not available. You're not there. And that absence starts haunting them. Not because they miss you, because they miss the power they had over you. You see, most people use ignoring as a manipulation tactic. But manipulation only works on the manipulatable. When you become sovereign, sealed, self-sourced, their tactics hit your energy field and dissolve. You don't fight back. You transcend the battlefield entirely. The samurai had a concept, mushin, no mind. The state where you're so present, so centered, that nothing can disturb your peace. That's where you're headed. The place where being ignored feels the same as being adored. Because your worth isn't determined by external response. It's an internal constant. Comment sovereign if you're ready to rule your own attention kingdom. Because that's what this is really about. Sovereignty. Now, here's the trap most people fall into. They do all this work, become amazing, level up completely. Then the person texts back and they crumble. All that growth gone. All that power surrendered. Why? Because they were doing it to get them back, not to get themselves back. Listen carefully. If you're doing this as a strategy to make them want you, you've already lost. This isn't about them. It's about becoming someone who would never tolerate being ignored in the first place. It's about raising your standards so high that people either rise to meet them or eliminate themselves. Subscribe if you're done playing small, done shrinking yourself, done accepting breadcrumbs of attention from people who should be grateful for your presence. Here's the most liberating truth you'll ever hear. Everyone who's ignoring you is doing you a massive favor. They're showing you exactly who doesn't deserve access to your energy. They're revealing who's not equipped to handle your frequency. They're sorting themselves out of your life. Let them. But what about closure? What about understanding why? Here's your closure. They're not capable of matching your depth. Here's your why. They're intimidated by your potential. People ignore what they can't control, what they can't understand, what they can't contain. Take it as a compliment. The real question isn't why they're ignoring you. The is why you're noticing. What part of you still needs their validation? What wound is asking for their bandage? What insecurity is begging for their reassurance? Find that part, heal it, then watch how irrelevant their silence becomes. You want to know the ultimate power move? Forgive them before they apologize. Release them before they return. Move on before they move back. Not because you're nice, because you're free. Because holding space for people who ignore you is like saving seats for ghosts. Exhausting and pointless. Comment below with the fire emoji if you're feeling this shift. Because once it starts, it's unstoppable. I'm going to tell you something that might hurt. You've been ignored before because you were ignorable. Harsh? Yes. True? Absolutely. But here's the beauty: ignorable is changeable. It's not a life sentence. It's a temporary state you're about to obliterate. How do you become unignorable? You become necessary, not to them, to yourself. You become so in love with your own life that people feel privileged to witness it. You become so engaged with your purpose that people compete for your attention. You become so rare that ignoring you feels like ignoring oxygen. But this transformation requires a death. The death of the person who checks their phone for validation. The death of the person who needs responses to feel worthy. The death of the person who shrinks to fit into someone else's priorities. That person has to die for the powerful one to be born. And when that powerful version emerges, everything changes. Your phone becomes a tool, not a lifeline. Responses become data, not drugs. People become additions to your world, not the center of it. You stop chasing and start choosing. You stop begging and start blessing. The person ignoring you right now, they're about to become a footnote in your success story. A brief mention in the chapter called "When I Finally Chose Myself." They'll be the catalyst you thank later for showing you what you were tolerating, for revealing where you were selling yourself short. Subscribe and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because we're building an army of people who refuse to be ignored. Here's the final pill to swallow. You've been participating in your own neglect. Every time you accepted delayed responses. Every time you made excuses for their absence. Every time you prioritized their potential over their actions. You were training them to ignore you, but that training ends today. From this moment forward, you operate on a new frequency. The frequency of full fuck yes or no. Either someone is excited to know you or they're not. Either they respond with enthusiasm or they don't respond at all. Either they match your energy or they lose access to it. No middle ground, no maybe zone, no gray area where disrespect lives. You know what happens when you hold the standard? Your circle gets smaller but stronger. Your connections get fewer but deeper. Your phone gets quieter but more meaningful. You trade quantity for quality. You trade availability for value. You trade being liked for being respected. And respect is the only currency worth collecting. Because when you have enough of it, being ignored becomes impossible. Not because people fear you, because they value you, because they know that your attention is a gift, not a given. Because they understand that access to you is earned, not assumed. Comment never again if you're done being an option in someone else's life. Because you're about to become the only choice in yours. The journey from ignored to adored isn't about them coming back. It's about you never leaving yourself again. It's about becoming so loyal to your own growth that other people's behavior becomes background noise. It's about building such a beautiful life that whether they text back or not becomes irrelevant to your joy. This is your moment, right now, while they're ignoring you, thinking they're in control. They have no idea what they've activated. They have no idea what monster of self-love they've created. They have no idea that their silence is your rocket fuel, that their absence is your presence, that their no is your yes to yourself. So here's your homework. Delete their number. Not block. Delete. Remove the temptation to check. Unfollow everywhere. Create a clean, energetic break. Then fill that space with you. Your dreams, your goals, your healing, your growth, your unstoppable, undeniable, unignorable evolution. And when you become who you're meant to be, when you're living so fully that you forget they exist, That's when the universe delivers your reward. Sometimes it's them crawling back. Sometimes it's someone better. Sometimes it's the realization that you never needed anyone's attention but your own. But I promise you this. Once you master the art of being unignorable, once you become someone who generates their own gravity, once you transcend the need for external validation, you'll look back at this moment, this pain, this person who's ignoring you, and you'll smile. Because they didn't reject you. They redirected you straight into your power. Subscribe right now if you're ready to become legendary. Drop a comment saying, "I'm unstoppable," if you felt this transmission. Share this with someone who needs to remember their worth. And remember, the person ignoring you today is creating the unstoppable force you're becoming tomorrow. Their loss, your launch, their silence, your strength, their absence, your ascension. Now go become everything they'll regret not choosing. The time is now. The power is yours. The transformation is inevitable. And if this message hit your soul, watch this next video because the journey to becoming unforgettable has just begun.